Recognize Senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. I think we can bring the temperature in the room down a little bit and talk about something that I think all of us are concerned about, that disturbs all of us, and that makes us take pause when we pick up a newspaper, when we watch a television, or when we listen to a podcast, and we hear once again that somebody in a trusted position in a religious institution, church, nonprofit, has once again taken advantage of somebody under their guidance. And friends, I'm not talking about small children. I'm talking about adult women and men. During my career, anytime I arrested a female or had to transport a female, whether I'm driving down Manchester Expressway and I see a lady on the side of the road with a flat tire and I had to pick her up, she got in my patrol car. The first thing I was required to do with the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office, gave my unit identifier, gave the name of the individual in my vehicle, and called in my mileage. And then when I got her to where she was going, I called in my unit identifier, I called in the name of the individual that was in my vehicle, and I gave my ending mileage, and I got 10-8, which means I got back to work. And I had to do this because in the past, people in my profession used their authority, used their presence to take advantage of people who had interpreted that authority as a fence that boxed them in, that trapped them where they had nowhere to go. And then as we move through life, we notice it's not just in law enforcement that this occurred, where adults with authority were exploiting, abusing, and mistreating other adults. It's in our schools, where the math teacher, the English teacher, the science teacher, the band teacher, the choir instructor takes advantage of an 18-year-old student who, though he or she may be 18 years old, they are under the authority of an educator. And because of that, we have laws that bring punishment on the individuals in those positions of trust when they use that trust to sexually assault another human being. And over these past few years, we have seen that it has moved from my profession, from the education profession, and into our churches, into our schools of faith, and into those other areas where they lead with God. And understand, when I talk about God, I'm not necessarily talking about the God that I believe in. The God that I believe is the one and only. I'm talking about whatever God you believe in. Because I can promise you, when Jim Jones assisted in the murder of 900 people who thought he was God, it is not the same God that I believe in, or the God that the people in this room believe in. But he used that same power in the worst way humanly possible and in recorded history in modern times. But what we have now is we don't have the Jim Joneses. What we have is we have the big churches, the small churches, the little groups, where men primarily, and let's be clear on that, primarily these are men, and primarily these victims are females. And they are looking for spiritual guidance. They are looking for someone to walk them through the darkest times of their lives. And that individual, that predator, sees an opportunity. And he exploits that pain and uses it against that person. And listen, not everybody's going to love this legislation. There's going to be some attorneys who represent some shockingly religious organizations that are going to be concerned, and they should be. And there's going to be some pastors and some others that are going to be worried, and they should be, because they're going to have to educate their ministers, they're going to have to educate their staff, they're going to have to put policies in place, they're going to put SOPs in place to make sure that there's a bright line between their job as a spiritual leader and their responsibility as a friend, neighbor, or fellow congregant. This law leans on the reasonable person standard. And if you don't know, I'll read you the legal description. The reasonable person standard is used to determine how an average, careful person would act in a similar situation. So whether you're going through voir dire and being impaneled on a jury, whether you're determined to be a reasonable person there, they will use that and say, in this case, would I have acted the same way? And I promise you, to these abusers, those reasonable people would say, no, I would not. Law enforcement uses reasonable standard every time they investigate a crime. Is it reasonable? And believe it or not, myself and the senator from the 30th, though at times we may not look that bright, we are bright enough to understand in an investigation most of the time to determine an abusive relationship or just a general run-of-the-mill relationship. We can make those determinations, and we give those opinions in our reports, and we give those opinions in our investigations. So if you look at the bill in front of you, and you look over to line 40, and I'll start at the word where, or I'll tell you what, I'll start at 38. Pastoral counseling or spiritual authority relationship means a relationship in which a clergy member provides spiritual guidance, pastoral care, religious instruction, confession, mentoring, or emotional or spiritual support in circumstances where a reasonable person would view the clergy member as exercising influence, trust, or authority over another person's spiritual, emotional, or personal well-being. It's very clear. And then what we have done, if you look on 67, knowingly engages in sexually explicit conduct. And if you look at 68, knows or reasonably should have known it contemporaneously, which means in conjunction with. If I'm somebody's spiritual counselor, I cannot at the same time counsel that person spiritually when they're in distress and manipulate the situation in order to have sex with them. And the most disgusting part of the entire process is the violators will come out and say it was consensual. Because at the time they were manipulating that person, they told that person that it was of God, that their conduct was ordained, that it was a spiritual relationship. And the entire time they're manipulating, they're trapping, they're isolating, and they're assaulting their victims. All this law does is put clergy in the same category as cops like me and teachers like the teachers in this room. That's all it does. It holds them to the standard they should have been held to a long time ago. And I'm going to tell you, I offered up an amendment to this bill. I was going to change a word. And I sat down and talked to some people. And when I get back to my desk, I'm going to ask for unanimous consent to withdraw that amendment. And I need your support. And I also need your support to pass this legislation. because every one of us in here has a family member that we love. Every one of us in here has had a mother, a sister, a wife, or other female in our life that we care about. And while we know abuse exists in this state and in this country and around this world, it should never exist in our house of worship. It should never exist in a room where somebody's there to comfort us spiritually and to talk to us about our God. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield for any questions.
There are no questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the well and be ready to make that motion when I return to my desk. Thank you.
I recognize the senator from the 41st to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise as an ordained Episcopal priest who has served in the church faithfully for over 15 years. And I have watched my church denominations and denominations across the nation struggle with this issue. And we've put in rules and tried to have trainings for clergy around the importance of these boundaries, and we've threatened and even taken people's ordinations away. But it still hasn't stopped this type of abuse. And so I am grateful to the senator from the 29th for standing up and helping give more teeth, yet another tool in the toolbox for clergy education to make sure that clergy stop these types of abuses. The reality is, clergy hold a sacred responsibility to care for the people who are under their care. And when we abuse that, the punishments for that should be grave. There's some of you in this body who know I don't believe in creating more felonies. I am very careful and cautious when it comes to incarcerating more people. But this is a moment where I stand firmly behind this bill and urge you to vote yes, because we have to have tools to hold clergy accountable for not just inappropriate behavior, but I'll even say for sinful behavior. So thank you, Senator from the 29th, and for all who've worked on this bill. I am grateful, and I encourage the House to work on continuing to tighten the language of what it means to be clergy so that we can make sure we are targeting exactly the right people. But I am so grateful that now we will have some additional tools to stop this heinous behavior. With that, I yield the well.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? I recognize the senator from the 29th for a motion. Senator, do your motion first. Yes, I'll let you close after you.
Mr. President, I ask for unanimous consent that Amendment 1 of SB 542 be withdrawn.
Senator from the 29th has asked unanimous consent that Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 542 be withdrawn. Is there objection? Without objection, the amendment's withdrawn. Now, per Senate rule, I'll let the senator from the 29th close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the two senators that stepped forward. There are many bills that we deal with in this chamber that we're not going to agree on. It may be about money. It may be about education. It may be about life. And it may be about death. But this is one bill that I think we can all agree on. I sit in committee meetings every day in this building, and we do not have a single committee meeting that we do not start out by praying to our God, where we claim to be His servant, and that we walk through this life letting His light shine through us. And I ask today that you let his light shine through you. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.
The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine.
On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55 and the nays are 0. This bill, having received a requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Well done, Senator. Well done. And thank you, Senator. Thank you, Pro Tem. Moving on, Senate Bill 442.